everyone, and welcome to the Business Takeaway, a videocast series where we interview professionals within the advertising, public relations, and marketing industry. I'm your host, Kate Landgren, and with me today I have Dr. Valerie Jones, who is currently an associate professor at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln in the College of Journalism and Mass Communications. It's so great to be able to talk to you today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kate.
Yes, of course. So first off, I kind of just want to ask you, what kind of got you into this industry or in the field of advertising and PR?
Yeah, so where I went to college, I went to Northwestern by Chicago, and there wasn't an advertising major. Now they have an integrated marketing communications major. But I was communication studies and sociology. So you can kind of get a sense of where that can go. I was interested in people and how they communicate, especially kind of in groups, and how groups of people act and how to get to know those people. And so I started getting internships in PR, and then I got an internship in media between junior and senior year. I didn't know anything about media strategy at that point. I just had a friend who had interned at Leo Burnett. That ad agency, they only had their internship program was for minorities. I did not fit in that group, so I was looking at this media spinoff thing called Starcom, and ended up getting an internship there between junior and senior year. Which, as we all know, those internships can be really, really critical and set you up for your career. So I got an offer for after I graduated, and then I went to San Francisco and started working with Starcom.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Tell me a little bit about more when you were in college, your bachelor's degree, master's degree.
Yeah. So my bachelor's degree is in communication studies in the School of Speech, and I double majored in sociology. I took classes in the Medill School of Journalism as well. I say I dabbled, which is highly insulting, I think, to anyone in Medill. But I went back actually. So after I graduated with my bachelor's, I moved to San Francisco, moved back to Chicago with Starcom, and then I got my master's degree part-time from Medill in integrated marketing communications. So I was working at Starcom in Chicago and getting my master's degree at night, which was a challenge, but you're with a bunch of other professionals who are doing the same thing. So it was a really awesome group of people. And then I moved here to Nebraska and eventually got my PhD from UNM.
Wow, that's awesome. Why did you decide to come to Nebraska?
I grew up here, so it's kind of like coming home, although I grew up in a little town called Lexington, which is in the middle of the state. Hopefully we have some people who know where that is. So I grew up there and then left for college and work, and then came back to Nebraska. My dad was actually sick, so I came back to be a little closer to him, but also had thought about maybe trying to teach at the university at some point. I had a great opportunity with Bailey Lauerman, so I could bring a lot of what I learned at Starcom to the media team at Bailey Lauerman, and then Swanson Russell, and then my own place and a bunch of other things. But my brother and sister both ended up moving back to Nebraska as well, so the whole family left and came back, and that's a good way to do it. I hope that everyone sees things beyond Nebraska, then comes back.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely my plan. So I like how you kind of tried different places and then ended up coming
That's
back.
great. It's good to know that you can be successful in a lot of different places, but then choose,
Mhm.
choose where you want to be, and a lot of times that's home.
Right, exactly. Tell me a little bit more about your career path once you graduated college.
Yeah. So I was super lucky in that I was set up from that internship at Starcom with a full-time gig after graduation. So I moved to San Francisco kind of at the height of the dot-com boom, which was really fun. I made like no money and paid extremely high rent. But fortunately, when you work in media strategy, people take you out to lunch because they want you to spend money with their, businesses, with their media entities. So I worked on entertainment television for most of that time, and a lot of people wanted us to spend our money with them. So great lunches and then like ramen for dinner. So that was great. I stayed with Starcom and I moved to Chicago and I worked on Kellogg and Heidelberg, a printing press manufacturer. And I mentioned that because you don't always get to work on like fun, sexy things. That's an aside, like entertainment television, fun, sexy stuff. You know, printing press manufacturers, like a little less so from my point of view, not to judge those who maybe get more excited about printing presses. Um, and then did ad sales for a while. So jumped over to the ad sales side with IGN Entertainment, which was bought by Fox Interactive. So I did like online media sales, which was fun, but I missed the strategy part of things and kind of getting to know who audiences were and how to connect with them and what sorts of media and communication paths to use and pursue. And that's when I moved back to Nebraska. So I moved back here and joined Bailey Lauerman as an associate director of media strategy, and helped kind of rev up their online media division, which was great. I bounced around a lot. Then I went to Swanson Russell, started up their digital insights and analytics department because I was super interested in, how do we understand audiences better based on their online behaviors, right? So how do we not just build cool digital things, but smart, cool digital things that did jobs, right? So built sites that didn't just look pretty, but achieved their goals with the audiences that we wanted to attract. And the same thing with digital ads. That was great. What did I do after that? Oh yeah, this is a really long tangential conversation. Where was Connexa in there? Oh no. Okay, so at Swanson Russell, they actually downsized a bunch of their department in the interactive department. So that's how I started Red Rover, and I know that's coming up. So I started, they say necessity is the mother of invention, right? And so I needed to make money because I couldn't anymore. And so I started Red Rover, and it was really actually a fortunate thing. So advice to all those who find their career paths being different than maybe what they would have thought, I didn't, it's like a super high achiever, high performer, like great grades, like great reviews and all those things, but still ended up getting downsized. These things happen. I would have never had the stones to start my own business because I'm just super group oriented, like super collaborative. I didn't minor in entrepreneurship like Kate is here. But I did, and it was such a fantastic, rewarding experience. It's pretty awesome, showing what you can do all on your own.
Yeah. I guess that kind of just moved right into my next question. What made you want to start your own business? And
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit more about Red Rover?
Yeah. So it was, is a digital communications company, basically. And so we focused on kind of media strategy for the modern consumer. And so it was really about how do we reach audiences through largely digital and social channels. As a media strategy person, I'm not producing the creative myself or developing the creative myself. I'm really thinking about how do we communicate with that audience and reach them through beautiful pieces of creative that my colleagues work on. And my first client with Red Rover was actually I'd applied to there was like a part-time job with Sargent's Pet Care Company doing their social media. And I was like, maybe I could do that in the interim while I look for my next thing. And that turned into a consulting gig that was my first client, and launched into a bunch of other things, which was really fun. So like media strategy for Sargent's, Inceptio, which is like a financial services company. I ended up working for Connexa, for a bunch of other folks. And a lot of the people were people that I'd worked with before in prior jobs. So again, always be good to people, even when they lay you off, because they may hook you up with work that you like even more in the future.
Right. They might be in your future. You have no idea.
Yes, absolutely. Never burn those bridges. Like just badmouth them behind, way behind their backs and way.
Yeah, behind their back so they can't hear it. Right.
Yep. Yes. Far behind their back.
That's awesome. So you are a professor here at the university. How do you balance being a professor and being the president of Red Rover? How do you find that balance?
Yeah. So I did a lot more consulting, and I'm just calling that my consulting work when I first started. And then at some point, I stopped taking consulting projects because I needed to finish my PhD, and that wasn't going to happen while I was being a professor and getting my PhD and consulting. And now I'm starting to take projects again. Um, so, that balance is hard. A lot of it is I try to. One of the benefits of having done this for a little while is that I've got a little bit more control over what projects I take and when, so I can try to focus them in the summer when I'm not as busy with classwork and research, and I can manage the scope of those projects a little more because I've done things like that before, and also it's a secondary a secondary job, so I don't have to say yes to everything. Um, that said, I do say yes to a lot because it's fun. And that's why I got into this in the first place. And I don't want to be a dinosaur, right? Where, you're taking classes from me thinking this person has no idea what's actually going on in this space. I really don't want to be that. And Red Rover certainly helps me stay balanced in that way.
That's really neat. That's really neat how like it almost doesn't feel like a job. Like it's kind of like a side hobby that you just enjoy doing, you know?
Yeah. And it's a lot of that is clients too. I mean, if you're lucky enough to work with, great clients and clients who used to be friends, or who are friends who maybe you used to work with at a prior job, then it's kind of cool to have an excuse to just work together again.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so awesome. I guess you did touch on a little advice, but is there any other advice that you would give to people wanting to enter the advertising industry?
Yeah. So I don't know if any of you watched Ted Lasso. I watched it, I think, 3 times through both seasons. Uh, Soccer coach or football coach, depending on what side of the pond you're on. And one of the things he talks about in there is be curious, not judgmental, which is something that has kind of stuck with me. And I think it's great advice for advertising, actually. Um, in class last week, we talked with a creative director at Swanson Russell. One of his pieces of advice was to have empathy, and to really be able to put yourselves in the shoes of the audience. And to me, those pieces of advice work together. So be curious, not judgmental, because you have to get to know audiences that are different than you, right? At Swanson Russell, I worked on Rainbird, which is an irrigation, like underground irrigation stuff. It's been a while. I worked on Profile, which is a soil amendment, like stuff you put in the soil to make golf courses greener. A number of outdoor clients. Um, so kind of lifestyles and jobs and industries. And again, Heidelberg, the printing press manufacturer, that are not, I do not have life experience with, right? But the more curious you are, and the less judgmental about maybe a life that's really different than yours or a demographic that's really different than yours. I do research with older people using voice assistants, right? That's a demographic that's a lot different than mine. But I think the more curious you are and the less judgmental and the more empathetic, the better you can be at your job, because it is at root, you're trying to, you're trying to influence a group of people to think, act, or feel a certain way. And you can do that when you really get who they are and when you respect who they are too. So that's a long answer, but be curious, not judgmental, have empathy, and then have fun, right? Because it's not heart surgery. At the end of the day, like, it's a really fun, creative group of people that you get to work with. And that is, that's a gift. It's a great thing to be able to do every day.
Yeah, absolutely. That's some great advice. I'll definitely take that with me. Is there anything else that you would like to add along your journey that you would like to tell anyone? Or maybe something that you've learned, or like your biggest piece of, I guess not advice, the biggest thing that you've learned that you didn't expect coming into this industry.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's can be open and flexible and persistent, and those things I think all go together. So be open to new opportunities. Like, I didn't think that I would ever get laid off from somewhere because I worked my ass off all the time. Um, and super high achieving person. I did. It's out of my control. And that created this opportunity for me that I'm so proud of. My Red Rover work, it's because it's me, right? Because I did it on my own. And I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't gotten kicked out of the nest a little bit, right? And like kicked out of my comfort zone. But I ended up, being able to go back to some of those relationships I'd established before, and turn that into consulting opportunities. So be open and be flexible. So, in that way, you have to be flexible to what's available. Even just getting my first internship, or it wasn't my first internship, but my first big internship, it wasn't with the creative agency. It was with this media agency that I didn't totally get what media was. I literally borrowed a friend's textbook and like just read some stuff before I interviewed. But it ended up being a perfect fit for me because it's all about knowing audiences and understanding how to connect. And be persistent, right? Like you're gonna get kicked in the face. You just are, and people aren't always going to agree with you, and things are going to go differently than you think. But the sun comes up in the morning, and it's not that you suck. It's just that you got to be flexible and open and find another way, and it could end up being better than the way that you'd maybe initially planned on. And just being a professor, I didn't grow up thinking necessarily that I'd be a professor, but I love it, and I'm able to work with students, and I'm able to still work in advertising, and I'm able to do research that I'm really passionate about and I really care about. And being open and flexible and persistent has helped me do that, and I think it helps a lot of people do those things.
Right. Yeah, I love how you use the persistent, because I feel like it's hard for young people, especially entering the industry. Like you said, you're going to get knocked off your feet. You're going to, lose the job. But do you think that that leads to opportunities that you would think that you would never have if that never happened to you?
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. And we all hear this advice, like just believe in yourself. And that's great advice. It's absolutely true, but it's easier said than done, right? It's much easier said than done. But it's true. I guess another piece I would add there is to be an advocate for yourself. There are a lot of situations where I've had to advocate for myself, whether it's about a raise, or whether it's about an idea. And you do need to be able to let go of ideas too, and be open to other people's feedback. But no one else is going to whether it's about just promoting my own work. Like, I'm a Midwesterner. I'm not comfortable with shameless self-promotion. I'm like not comfortable with talking about achievements. I'm a bashful, feel like I don't want to brag Midwesterner. But if you're not an advocate for yourself, no one else is going to be, right? And it's not because they don't like you or they don't think you're great, but no one else is going to be more vested in your career and your life than you are. So don't be afraid to be an advocate for yourself too, as you work that persistence, and as you keep reminding yourself that everybody gets knocked down, and it's all right. Like, feel that, but the sun rises again,
Yeah, that's reassuring for me, at least, because everything's unknown right now. I'm about to graduate college and I'm like, where am I going to be? I don't know. But I think trusting that process and believing that whatever you do and then you end up doing is where you're supposed to be. So that's really reassuring that you say that coming from a professional. Awesome.
You need time to build those relationships. Like, those relationships can carry you through a lot and lead to a lot of those opportunities too. It's never a wasted time to invest in a relationship.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. That concludes our interview today. Thank you so much for your time, and it was a pleasure getting to talk to you once again. I'm your host, Kate Landgren.
Thank you again for having me. It was great to chat with you.
Yes, of course. This was Dr. Valerie on the Business Takeaway. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to be up to date with all of our videos, and don't feel afraid to reach out.